Okay, so welcome to the Yes to Fair Redevelopment Public Meeting on the 7th of April 2022. This meeting's entitled How Our Estates Are Fighting for Fair Redevelopment. And this is your chance to contribute and learn from estate campaigners about how we've pushed the council back in some of the developments. Yes to Fair Redevelopment is the campaign group set up in July 2021 in response to the infill policy in Southwark. Our demands include no demolition without permission, no removal of green spaces, play areas or community facilities, and no unsafe rooftop development. The campaign was set up last year to force Southwark Council to listen to residents of several estates who faced unsuitable development. Residents have won pauses to the council's plans on some of these estates, and it seems unlikely now that the council will rescue all of these schemes. Residents on Priory Court, Brenchley Gardens, Elim, Dodson Amigo and the Vauban estates have pushed back the council on rooftop and infill development. Residents of other estates, including Southampton Way, Nunhead and Kingston, are also campaigning, and I could also include Lordship Lane and Sydenham in with that group. So tonight we'll be hearing from Emma and Kath from the Vauban Estate Group about how they won the famous pause and how they're now in a position to be able to say that their local councillors have withdrawn their support for the scheme, I believe. This is a significant win and entirely down to their own hard work. There's much more to do, but it's an extremely good start. By way of introduction, I'm just going to give a quick history of the YFR campaign. Southwark Council's infill policy aims to build more homes for people on existing council-owned land, mainly estates throughout the borough. Green pockets of space between existing council buildings have been described as underused or underdeveloped. These spaces often include playgrounds, ball courts, and open shared green spaces. Tenants, residents and users of these spaces contest these arbitrary descriptions, saying that these spaces are essential and part of the design of the often densely built flats. At least one scheme at Dodson Amigo involves the demolition of 8 homes as well. Poor engagement is a hallmark of the council's infill policy. In one example, Brenchley Gardens estate, the council concealed from its residents the true nature of the proposed scheme for rooftop development. First, it failed to tell residents that an infill scheme was also planned for their green space. Then it only came to light after the scheme was paused that this infill block was to be 100% private housing. Residents were angry that the council had tried to obtain their consent for the development on false pretences. The chair of the Housing Scrutiny panel described the council's approach as trust being undermined by wrong or surprise or inconsistent information, promised action from officers failing to happen, further undermining trust amongst residents, the disregarding of feedback from nominated representatives from the estate, a failure to respond to people with some kind of basic communications. This probably sounds familiar to most of you in this meeting. Rooftop development proposals are also being proposed. These developments are likely to be unsafe. Flat roofs on council blocks will have 1 or 2 stories built on top of them. Residents underneath these developments worry that these structures are unsafe, and indeed this is the experience of rooftop homes in the Southwark Housing Association blocks in Bermondsey. The development has led to drilling through people's ceilings, flooding, and incredibly loud noise for 2 years, described as a nightmare by residents and documented in detail by the Southwark News. The only rooftop scheme so far attempted by the council has stalled. That's the Chiltern Grove scheme, where residents have endured 2 years of scaffolding, which has now been removed as the council's building control just won't sign off the development. This could point to inherent safety worries. According to Arup, an engineering group commissioned by Southwark Council, the developments could be a risk for disproportionate collapse. That's their words. The council buried the Arup report, although yes, the Fair Redevelopment have published it online and many people have seen it. Yes, the Fair Redevelopment have 8 demands to Southwark Council about how development should take place. We are in favour of council homes, but we want those council homes to be built with the existing tenants and residents very much in mind, the protection of community facilities, acting on the climate emergency, stopping the demolitions and the sell-offs and so on. Yes, the Fair Redevelopment exists to support groups of tenants and residents who want to challenge unfair development on their estates. In its short life, YFR has organised a series of successful meetings, protests and demonstrations. These don't necessarily include the ones that have also happened on people's estates which are more numerous, in fact. So back in July 21, there was the Dodson Amigo protest picnic. In July 2021, there was the YFR protest at the Council Assembly. YFR joined the COP26 demonstration on the 6th of November. There was a protest outside Planning Subcommittee B for Slippers Place on the 22nd of November 21. Then the demo from Vauban Estate to Tooley Street on the 24th of November, and just recently the demo from Dodson Amigo to Tooley Street on the 23rd of March 2022. We do have regular meetings, so people can come and share their experiences, ask questions and plan actions. If you want to join our mailing list, please put your email address and phone number in the chat if you haven't already joined the list. And we communicate mostly by WhatsApp, so your phone number is probably the most important thing to include. Okay, so that's a quick introduction. And I will now hand over to one of the shining successes of Southwark, which is the Vauban Estate campaigners, Kath and Emma.
Thank you very much, Tanya. I'm going to share the screen because we've obviously got a few slides we'd like to share with you. So I will do that immediately. Let's go with this one. Joys of technology, eh? Okay. Can we all see the slides?
Yeah, we've got those.
So Kath and I would obviously like to present this to you. We want to be able to give you an understanding of obviously what our campaign has been, but also what it's helped us learn and understand in how to be able to move forward most effectively, obviously for this case, but also for others who may be doing the same on their own estates. So that's why we've called it Communicate, Connect and Conquer, because it's all about being able to do the networking and getting an understanding of everyone else's opinions and beliefs as much as anything. So to start us off, the backstory. So the Vauban Estate is SE16. We're directly in front of Spa Gardens. I don't know how well all of you know the area. We're very close to Jamaica Road. We're very close to Tower Bridge Road. And we are next to a number of other estates, but also we're on Spa, just off of Spa Road, which over the last 10 years, I would say, has had a large number of private builds put into place. So we're situated just next to a number of those. our opposition to the new build. I've been a tenant there, a leaseholder there for 15 years now. Kath, I believe you've been there for a little longer.
Yeah, I started off as a council tenant in 1990, and then bought my place under the right to buy scheme.
So as a result, we've obviously both been around long enough to know what the situation is for the estate. And with regard to the opposition, we were actually presented with details about a new build project back in 2019, in the October of that year. And we were told that the council wanted to make use of our current car parking area, that which they'd renovated only 4 years before, claiming that it was necessary for us to have an expanded car parking estate because of the need for it to be a larger a car parking area, only to then tell us in 2019 that they wanted to use that very same space to actually build, at the time they said, 18 flats on. So needless to say, it didn't go down particularly well, but then obviously other things took over on the COVID front. Prior to that, we had been speaking to the respective project group enough to set up a project sort of forum that the Vauban Estate residents were a part of, and we had meetings initially. It was sort of once every, I think, 3 months, in which we would obviously discuss what the options were. But when that originally started, they'd claimed that they wanted to find out why we wouldn't necessarily want this, and equally what our needs as an estate were. That moved forward, and to the point where they brought in an architectural firm. Kath was also a part of that process. Kath, I don't know if you want to expand on that bit.
Yes, I sat in on the architect interviews, which was about a day of architectural firms presenting their ideas for the project, and it seemed like a fair process to me, and I think that the most sensitive, or the firm with the most sensitive approach was selected, and they certainly seemed to take notice of my input. So I didn't have any axe to grind against that process.
So that was in 2020 when that took place. And then as we moved forward into the new year, it became quite apparent that the council were actually avoiding us. There was a lack of communication with us. And then, as his name's already been mentioned, but then we had the Twittergate affair with Leo Pollack, who also happens to be one of our 3 ward councillors. We obviously found out about this and about the fact that he'd resigned, but what really kicked all of this campaigning off was the fact that he was still invited to our meetings as the forum group. And we were we didn't understand why that was the case, because as far as we saw it, if he was no longer being given his housing role because of obviously his the lack of trust that the respective parties had in him, why should we be expected to have him on our new build project discussions? We obviously found out more about the situation and expressed our concern about that, but we also at the same time realised that actually the majority of people who we were speaking to were both very angry and very anxious about the potential new build and very much in opposition. So as a result, it went far enough for us to want to set up a petition about this, something that was suggested as an idea by one of our fellow residents, Phil. And we did that in May 2021 and June 2021, and proceeded to get 90% of the estate signing up, saying that they too were in opposition to the plans that have been put forward about the new build. We are an estate of 102 flats in total. So we obviously presented this to the council, to the ward councillors, to the planning people, to the key chair people, but we didn't receive any responses. So we then moved forward and actually wrote it out as a formal document, which we then presented to the new build team, but it was new build opposition. It was presented to the planners in the September of 2021. September 2021 was when we'd been told that they would be putting forward the proposal for the build, and further to our opposition, they then said that it was going to be put on hold, and that they would no longer be processing the pitch then, and that instead we would be consulted as an estate about what our needs were and what we thought it would be better to do in relation to a new build. The new build size had gone down to 13 flats by this time, but there was obviously still the formal opposition as to how, as to us wanting this. The Southwark said that they were going to introduce housing consultants who would speak to us about the matter. But again, there was still a lack of recognition of our petition and of our residential concerns. So, as already mentioned by Tanya, we were a part of the protest march that took place in November 2021. And at the same time, Kath also happens to be an excellent artist and had designed some fantastic protest sheets that we distributed across the estate to give people a reminder as to the reasoning as to why they'd opposed in the first place, so that they could share these details with any consultants who were potentially then to knock their doors. We then also submitted a report that Kath had again put in a lot of work and effort on finding out more about the maintenance and repairs issues that hadn't been dealt with appropriately by the council. That had also been one of our arguments about why we were opposing the new build, as we believed that if the council can't even deal with the matters of the current estate, how could we then be expected, how could the new residents of any new build be expected to have their needs met as well. That was put together in 2021 and sent out to the councils once it had obviously been put up formally as a report, sent out to the council departments, obviously again including planning, but the key committees as well, including the housing committee, as much as the housing department and the other respective parties. And this resulted in us, the housing project being paused in January 2021. This is the report as featured in the Southwark News in February 2021. So that gives you details about where we're coming from, but what just wanted to do now is a quick run through as to how we obviously went about getting the level of support that we got and how we worked on publicising it as much as anything. The campaign toolkit is what we've decided to call this. It all started on the team effort front. 90% of our fellow residents signed the petition opposing this. That in itself had proven to be something that showed that we were all united on that matter. As a result, it was all about building the relationships across our estate and interaction with one another, but also sharing our concerns and sharing our own ideas so that we all felt like we were part of the same team. This involved, as mentioned, about the ideas, but also about how we could look to move forward and what our needs and aims would be, so that, again, we could reach agreements with one another. This then led to communication. Kath, I don't know if you want to give some more info about that, about how we set that up.
Yeah, so we were advised that we should have a Facebook account, which we don't have, and a Twitter account, which we did set up. We set up a joint email account so that we could. There were actually 4 of us who set up the Vauban Estate Group, so that the 4 of us had access to the same email account. And we were advised to paint some banners. You saw a couple of the banners in the previous slide. They were well utilised during the march in November, and we made some posters as well, that when the first pause happened, that was after we spoke to Stephanie Cryan, and she conceded that there hadn't been enough consultation with the residents. That's when she put the first pause in place, and Emma and I and the other two members of the Vauban Estate Group felt that it could just be an election strategy. So we wanted to make a poster that Vauban Estate residents could have in their homes to display in a window or on their door that showed their opposition, and had a shortened list of pertinent points so they could refer to it if the consultation people came round. Also, we decided to make a leaflet that was personalised to the estate before the YFR march in November, because we thought that that would be a way to get people better engaged. It's fantastic that the YFR leaflets are distributed so widely, but our experience has been that if you can actually knock on someone's door, they can put a face to the campaign, and you can, you know, if they agree with what you're saying, and then you give them a piece of paper, it's less likely to end up in the bin, and they are, you know, more likely to actually turn up at a place at a time and join in with something. So that was the idea behind that. It was also while we were distributing the opposition posters and the leaflets before the march, that we identified certain households that were having particular problems with disrepair, and that's when I started. I'd already decided to make a questionnaire before that, but Emma identified those households as she was distributing the posters and the leaflets, and then she would let me know the number, tell you know, check with the people that it was fine that I knocked a few minutes later, half an hour later, or whatever, and that's when I went round and did the first sweep of the estate with the questionnaire.
Great, thank you very much. So the other thing was obviously about speaking to the ward councillors, but again, with Leo Pollack, it's not always easy. We've got Sunny Lamb, Leanne Werner and Leo, and we have made sure that we have consistently been communicating with them to alert them as to what our concerns are, but also so that it can be noted on emails from that we have sent, that we have attempted to maintain a level of communication with them. If they choose not to respond, then obviously that's very unfortunate, but it also acts as a good argument for us as to the lack of support that we have from the people who we are supposedly voting into place. And that goes the same with the resident service officer as much as anything. As Kath said, it's about being able to connect and to do that face-to-face communication, and to be able to keep talking
and to keep asking awkward questions as well.
So then we move on to the actual networking. There is one of the lovely designs that Kath had created, and that is Kath wearing it. But that's obviously showing, that was when we were on the march in November, but to show obviously the level of support that we had across our own estate. It was about reaching out, not just to the estate though, it was also about getting in touch with other people from the community and finding other sources and resources and other organisations that we could speak to who would be able to understand our plight, but also who may be able to help us and be able to provide us with advice as much as anything. And that can range from obviously the universities and academic bodies to other people who happen to live on other estates. Interaction with other estates has also proven to be useful, as we know from the YFR work, and I think we've found it of immense benefit to be able to connect with people through YFR, and I think it's a wonderful organisation, as it gives people the chance to have that form of connection with one another. Also about joining local campaigns, which again has been a key message passed on by YFR, and which we've attempted to obviously pursue ourselves across other networks. I know that, Kath, your example, particularly across on the academic front, with the students who you were speaking to, the architectural students.
Yeah, we had somebody, an architectural professor, a professor of architecture from UCL, reached out to us via Twitter, which is why Twitter is such a good resource. Me personally, I find it really uncomfortable to be on Twitter. I don't like social media. The level of disrespect that it's so easy to show for people who don't share your views is astonishing, really. But in the respect of being visible and being contactable, it works really well. So the professor of architecture got in touch with us and asked if some of her students could approach us, and they did, and we shared lots of information with them, and they made a short film about our campaign, but they also gave us some really useful information as well about the things that you instinctively feel, the harm that a building is going to do to the people right next door, by blocking light and blocking the view, although that's not considered a valid opposition as far as planning are concerned. They gave us reports, scientific reports that backed up those concerns, that we were able to put in our documents.
And also obviously sharing details with politicians and council departments. We'd obviously spoken to our politician, Neil Coyle, and had successfully been able to get him to come to visit the estate. But then 2 weeks later was when he actually got barred. And so we weren't able to take that much further. But it was a good exercise to obviously be able to relay to him what our concerns were and the justification that the council were using for building this estate, but equally our justification for why it wasn't necessarily either the best site or the best action to take in the relevant area. And also, as mentioned, about speaking to other bodies, that could be housing, that could be political, that could be environmental as much as anything, which is a key argument, especially in the current climate, along with the academic parties. So self-care is also something that this whole campaigning has made us all very aware of, and I'm sure all of you will agree with this wholeheartedly, because it's hard work, isn't it? And it can end up being a situation where people can take on a hell of a lot without realizing it and then feel quite overwhelmed. And I think what's been useful for us has been that we've worked effectively as a core team, so have been able to make sure that our tasks and actions are being shared out, but also that we can talk to one another if we do have to step back for a bit for whatever reason. We all have different skills and we've all been able to apply those in different ways, so that's also been very useful for on the sharing front. We've taken breaks, as mentioned, and then also, so I'll come back to that. We've been able to celebrate when we did reach our pause. Whilst obviously we're still looking for them to say no, they're not going to plan to do it at all. A pause is still better than a yes, we're going to do it now. So making it happen, as mentioned, team effort, communication, network and self-care. With that in mind, obviously our more recent updates involve the the continuing work about the pressure still being on Southwark Council on the housing maintenance needs. Further to the report having been submitted, the council did step up a gear and claimed that they were going to put they were going to take a lot of actions to improve the places of residence in which those who'd been part of the report lived in. But they also said that they were going to follow it up across the estate. That we were told that on the 11th of January this year, and needless to say, nothing else has gone any further on that front. So we are finding ways in which we can obviously get the opinions and submit a questionnaire to other residents so that we can get a better perspective that we can then share with the council, because we figure if they're not going to do the graph themselves, then it would be advantageous for us to be able to show them exactly what the situation is. We obviously still oppose the council new build, and we're still trying to arrange meetings with them, but that's a work in progress. But obviously, because we do wish to discuss the arguments that we have against the plans, no ward councillor and no other councillor from Southwark has made any attempt to actually have any form of meeting with us, except two from the Liberal Democrat Party, who are Lib Dem councillors, but none of the others, despite our requests and despite our, putting dates forward, have agreed to any form of meeting. We obviously want to make sure that Southwark still does engage in democratic processes of sorts, and we have consistently told them that we want them to show that they do care about the residents, and that's why we're doing what we're doing, to express our concerns, but also because we want to make sure that everyone has a decent place to live in. And we are still maintaining communication with residents from the other estates, because, as noted, especially through the YFR group, we obviously support the causes of others, and we're happy to share obviously our own experiences, but we also want to learn from actions that others are taking in similar environments. And there was a really good quote that came up. And this was with a document that was shared by the YFR, and I think it was to do with one of the Labour. He was a representative from another estate elsewhere, when he said about that it's about housing and human needs, not numbers. Unfortunately, I think all of us have experienced that with a lot of the housing figures. We're consistently told that we need that the council has a list of 16,000 people, but unfortunately, the way that we see it is if they can't maintain a decent level of accommodation for residents who already exist, to the point where it's actually causing health and well-being concerns of quite a severe nature in some cases, then how can we be expected to support them and their own policies? These are our details. Do get in touch. That's a lot, folks. Anything else you want to add, Kath?
I would just say keep good notes and back up your stats, prepare to follow up, and that all the way along the process we've thought, okay, if we do this one thing, it's going to make a difference, and it makes a little bit of difference for a little bit of time, and then the steamroller keeps running. So it's a long haul thing. So you're in it for it's a marathon really, with hurdles, and that's why it's important to rest every now and again.
We're in it to win it. Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks, Emma.
Okay, well, I mean, that was such an inspiration, and you didn't even get into the detail of so much of that. I'm particularly interested to know about your communications with the various council departments, and committees and so on. And I think that, and you were still doing it in, at the council assembly on the 23rd of March as well. And I completely concur that this is a war of attrition, and it's basically who gives up first, and that every little thing you do does make a difference, but in the end it's about consistency. And I think that what you've done there is you've really showed how the many faceted elements of your campaign, every bit of them was important. I'm also kind of really impressed that this issue of disrepair not only becomes an extremely cogent argument, for looking after the people on the estate,
Absolutely.
but you might actually get some disrepair issues resolved
Absolutely.
as a byproduct, not really a byproduct, but as a product of the campaign. So I actually think it's much more than about simply trying to prevent unfair development. It's also about people's ability to live in an environment that's acceptable and that's healthy for them and doesn't cause harm to them. So really impressed, and it's really no surprise that you are where you are. And I will now open it up if people want to make some contributions, either to ask questions or to make some comments about other things related, including their own campaigns. Then please go ahead, and then I'll ask you to come back at the end of that and sum up and answer any questions if you can. So we've got a little while. It's nearly it's 5 to 8 and we've got till 8:30. So let's see if we can have about 15 minutes of discussion. Okay, so Jacquie, off you go.
All right. Yeah, I am really impressed and very happy to be here. Just to tell you a bit more about me or about my family. We have been recently on a BBC documentary program, if you have seen it, from Southampton, Hanging On to Homes. We are expecting a CPO public hearing in July, and with that, it is extremely quite demanding, to actually prepare for that and get my daughters to engage in their education and GCSE exam and my full time job as well. Extremely distressful, and I do need experts in terms of whether it's architects and more academics support, and I would like to really contact. I have been following some of your accounts on Twitter already, and I plan to email you. But there is also one thing which I prepared, because the current regeneration or redevelopment is not good, for all main parties. Starting from the council, the council is losing assets, what it can get in rent, and tenants, would be moved from secure tenancy to assured tenancy, which is a step backwards. Leaseholders would be losing their home without anything equivalent, because shared equity is not anything like we have, and so nothing equivalent is prepared. temporary tenants and private tenants are actually treated by regeneration schemes as if and councils as if they are squatters, and the council is involved in actually devaluing its own assets because it sends those surveyors that actually undervalue in such a way that we cannot actually be able to purchase anything in the whole city, let alone in the area. And it needs to change. So I have written a draft petition call for inclusive regeneration, and I would like to share with you. My plan is for us to petition the government, let regeneration be better, so that it actually adds to the betterment of lives of everyone involved. I would send you the draft. You could add, and or edit, and so that we can all actually sponsor it together, with as many housing groups as possible, so that the government can actually look at it. I think we can petition, locally in different councils, but the whole thing is actually it is from central government. So central government need to look at it and need to give instructions to all the councils. So I think you have shown us, the value of unity within your area, but we need to actually take it, to the whole city and to the whole country to actually unite and, petition the government, because I think, unless otherwise the government makes a decision to actually review it and improve it, and local councils would not do something, substantial. Thank you. Sorry for talking too much.
Not at all. Thank you so much. And you've given us your contact details. So if you want to, we'll put you on the WhatsApp group and forward you to the mailing list. So you've got a contact with us from now on.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, so Georgina, you're next.
Right. Right, where am I? Sorry, I'm doing this on my phone, so it's just a bit more awkward. Yeah, I mean, as other people have said, it's kind of really impressive what you've been able to do in just a matter of a few years. And I think that it's key that you've been able to do things so quickly. Just to talk about the Save Central Hill campaign, I've only really been involved in it kind of over about the last year. And so for them, the prospect of having their estate demolished has been going on since 2012. And that in itself has created kind of, from what I can see, more problems, because there's already a lot of people who have already moved off the estate, because they can't be hanging around for goodness knows how many more years in doubt about, like where they're going to be living, if they've got a young family, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like a few people have managed to carry on with the campaign, but I mean, things like you were saying about displaying posters and things like this, there's a lot of fear on the estate now that they don't want to become visible to the council because they fear that they will become kind of targets and not rehoused properly, and all manner of things. So it's kind of, I just feel that from what I understand, pretty much everything that's been talked about, Save Central Hill have been doing, they've been reaching out, they've got their Facebooks, their Twitters, accounts, we've got the banners, we've got the posters, we've attended meetings, we've got stuff out on YouTube, but it just seems to reach the point where Lambeth Council just will not listen. And it's just like, where to go, what to do, where to go for you know, from where they are. I mean, I personally think that now, because it's been going on for so long, I mean, I firmly believe that, for example, Lambeth should be calling in all their demolition plans that were made before they declared a climate emergency, because things have changed, but they don't seem to have changed. They say nice fluffy things in their documents, but as I say, the reality on the ground, they're not doing what they say they're doing. Kind of at our wits' end, really, about where to go next. As I say, there's fewer people living on the estate from what I understand. As I say, I don't live on Central Hill, I live on another council estate, but I feel quite threatened by this Labour Lambeth because of what they're doing, and they're not listening. They're putting out, even in their manifesto, they're putting out that they're building more council homes across the estates that are going to be demolished, but that's not true, because we've got freedom of information requests and their current figures, and we can see that's not true. So they're lying. And I don't know. We need ideas. Where to take this? It needs ramping up quickly because of the climate emergency, and I think that that's kind of the biggest leg, if you like, that they have to stand on. We need to change quickly. They can't keep just doing things in the same old way, business as usual. And as regards the plans for the demolition, obviously the infill situation is very different from if you were living on an estate that's actually being faced with being demolished. And just the nature of what they're doing and all the private building that they're planning on doing, they claim to be trying to help solve the housing crisis and to get people off the housing waiting list. In Lambeth, there's 38,000 people on the housing waiting list, and there'll be 30 fewer council homes on these estates once they've been demolished and rebuilt. So it's not helping, and plus there's going to be so many more private homes. It's going to change the demographic of the estate so much. It will actually push up rents. It will push up house values, not only on the estate, but in the surrounding area. So it's stoking the housing crisis. It's just making everything worse. And the fact that they're even proposing to do this at a time when there's now a cost of living crisis, an energy crisis, a mental health crisis because of COVID and everything, I just can't get my head around why they are even considering pushing ahead with this. Sorry, I'm going on a rant now. But
I'm going to have to ask you to sum up, Christian.
I'll stop. That's it. Okay. I've had my rant. I don't know what we could do.
Okay. Coming from a anti-demolition perspective, so we, as Southwark Council Housing, we spent about 20 years fighting demolitions, and while we didn't prevent the demolitions of the Haygate or the Aylesbury estate, I mean, yeah, Aylesbury is still part demolished. I think that the fighting and the constant battling has actually been a major factor of the council changing their overall policy, which is not to go for wholesale estate demolitions. They made that change a few years ago, and their attempt to rectify their mistakes of the past is the infill schemes. So I would say there is a point in fighting, even if you don't win every battle, because ultimately what you're doing is you're you know, you're storing up more reluctance in the future to go down that route, and that's why we are where we are in Southwark, I believe. That's my opinion anyway. Might be a little bit simplistic. There's you know, the housing market as well obviously has something to do with it, but I think our opposition over the years has led them to this change policy. Okay, Janine, you're next.
Okay, I just wanted to say I was really impressed with Emma and the Vauban Estate, that whole campaign. It's really amazing. I joined the Bells Garden sort of campaign quite late. When I joined it, it felt like the group that had been fighting had not given up, but they, you know, I joined the kind of project team, and they'd been engaged with the sort of Southwark group for 2.5 years. So a lot of the people that were involved were very tired by the time I got in and got involved. And I think that's one of the sort of policies of Southwark. They kind of really try to beat the, I don't know, the energy out of people. And as Georgina was saying, you know, people have been, you know, fighting really hard on these kind of campaigns. And I was really impressed with the whole networking that you did, Emma, on the Vauban. I kind of knocked on the, we call it the yellow brick, but the Bells Garden is a massive estate. I know you mentioned that your estate is like 103 units, 102 flats. We've got 523 flats, and I kind of did it twice or 3 times over, trying to get people to sign a petition. So it is hard work, and that kind of knocking on doors, it's part of that kind of communication. And I was really, you know, interested to hear about the maintenance report on the yellow brick. We've got so many, I actually don't live on the yellow brick. My son used to play on that kind of football pitch, which they're kind of demolishing, and that was why I was initially drawn to getting involved in that campaign. But you know, there's so many issues with the yellow brick. It's literally falling apart, and a lot of the, you know, there's a lot of disengagement with tenants. They don't want to be, they just don't have time. People don't have time to be engaged. So, you know, it is really hard. So I think in terms of the maintenance, I think that's a really interesting aspect, and I'd be really interested to see what you'd put in that report, because, you know, if things are falling apart in people's, you know, flats, it's something that they can relate to. I think sometimes people living in these flats, you know, I found it really hard to kind of knock on doors and explain that, you know, these builds are going to happen in 2 years' time, or, you know, next year. They, you know, people didn't kind of want to engage with that. But if something is falling apart in their own flat, then it makes it a bit more relatable to say, you know, if they can't deal with the things that are falling apart in your flat, and then they want to build 100 new flats, you know, on our estate, on the estate, in hearing how you put together and how you you know, shared it to the others, and how you shared that with Southwark, because it seems like that was actually a key sort of crux that ultimately paused or stopped that redevelopment. So I think that that is quite a key report, and it might be really important for other estates to look at how you did that. So I'd be interested to know how you did that. Yeah, that's it.
Excellent point, and points being made there, Janine. And I'm afraid your internet's going a bit flaky there in Trier.
Turn my camera off.
Yeah, okay, that might help a little bit. Right, we've got 2 more. So Gary, and then Pascal, and then I'm going to ask Kath and Emma to sum up. Gary.
Thank you. First of all, Emma and Kath, thank you so much. That was a really clear, lucid presentation of what's obviously been a really good campaign. And so congratulations, you've obviously done some fantastic work there. I've got a question about Bell's Gardens, first of all, actually, which is, I was leafleting, spent several hours leafleting Bell's Gardens for the last demonstration at Tooley Street. And one of the tenants there was telling me that the week before, the final decisions had all been made. So just wondering whether that's the case or whether there's an ongoing process that the tenants are still fighting. But more generally, I mean, it's interesting hearing the different stories from Lambeth and Southwark, because the Labour administrations in the two boroughs are quite different politically. And I think that one of the specific things about Southwark is that there's a sort of the good side and the bad side. The good side is that they have decided that council tenancies, council flats are the answer to the housing crisis. But because they've sold off all the family silver and haven't got any land left, their solution is to build new council flats on existing estates, which is where all the problems arise with infill and rooftop builds. But that does give us a bit of leverage within the Labour Party, because actually we're talking to people who at least are saying that they believe in council housing and council tenancies, yet they're actually attacking the living conditions of council tenants. So it doesn't fit very well. So, I mean, there are quite a lot of people in the Labour Party locally who are very sympathetic to the campaigns around against infill and rooftop builds. There's a lot who aren't, of course, as well, and there's a lot of abuse being thrown around towards residents campaigning against them. But where there are people, and you know, we are in a bit of a network within the Labour Party on the left, where there are people in a ward that are supportive of the campaigns, it may be possible for us to apply a bit of pressure within the party on those ward councillors to get motions of support raised in local party branch meetings, and even to try and facilitate a dialogue with councillors, and even meetings possibly with councillors. So I think that is something worth exploring a bit further. Now, I mean, I don't know in the case of the Vauban estate who I might be able to sort of talk to within your ward to raise any issues, but I do know that one of your councillors, Sunny Lamb, kind of professes to be towards the left of the party. I mean, I have my doubts sometimes, but so there may be some mileage there, is all I'm saying. It's something worth exploring further offline, I guess. The other thing I was going to mention was that the councillors are all furiously campaigning right now for the May elections. And the last thing that they'll be wanting to get is any bad publicity about what they're doing to existing tenants in council estates. So, I mean, I haven't got any specific ideas, but there may be an opportunity to leverage their nervousness about the election campaign to put pressure on them as well. Final thing I wanted to mention was, I mean, it doesn't sound like this is the case with the Vauban estate, but I'm not sure, but where building work is started and then paused, and you get scaffolding left around the building for long periods of time, and building materials and state of disrepair and so on, it's actually a very unsafe environment. I mean, it's a sort of, that kind of situation has contributed to Damilola Taylor's death, murder, the disrepair and decay of the estate that he lived in, and the poor lighting and so on. We know that Peckham Rye Station has got appalling lighting and isn't kept in a proper state of repair, and that's a real safety issue for women going in and out of the station. And so I wonder whether that is another dimension that we could perhaps think about highlighting in campaigns, is that the safety of the environment for people who live there during the work, and especially when the work is paused for any length of time, without the materials and scaffolding being removed. That's me. Thanks.
Thank you, Gary, and Pascal.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for that really good presentation, Emma and Catherine. And thank you for all your hard work on the Vauban estate. It's not just, you know, your estate that you're keeping the area healthy for. I will still be able to see the park from my flat, and the trees and everything, because, you know, you've managed to prevent the council building on what is your amenity. I remember that bricking in of the car park, they took away a pretty little tree and a pretty little walkway to make it more concrete, you know, and so they harmed the environment once, and now they want to harm the environment again. I also, just on that point that Gary made, the Vauban estate is due its upgrade of, like, you know, the 10 years major works, and it seems as if there's been constant major works on the Vauban estate. I've lived here for 13 years opposite the Vauban estate, and you know, there was a lot of scaffolding left up recently on our part of the estate that's opposite us, because they were repairing, obviously, a damp issue there, although I think the damp's still there with the number of windows that are open on that side of the estate, but that's by the by. But I also wanted to let people know I'm actually a council, Southwark resident in who's in need of housing. So I'm one of the 16,500 people on the council waiting list. So I should be saying, yeah, build these homes, but they're not building the right size home for my family, and they're not building the right size homes for other families. You know, I think another fact of the Vauban estate that I've heard is that there's 5 families that are overcrowded who need homes that are bigger than 3 bedrooms. Well, in the plans we've seen from Emma and Kath's presentation that they kept decreasing the amount of homes that they were going to build. So inevitably they aren't going to build enough homes even for the people that are living in overcrowded accommodation on that estate, and probably because they're in overcrowded accommodation living in mouldy flats. So all the housing issues that exist interlink so much, you know, the disrepair, the safety, the overcrowding, you know, all these things interlink. And I think what they also try to present to us is, you know, the Labour narrative. You know, it's awful to hear that you've suffered what we actually suffer internally within the party as well. I don't want to go into that because that's not something that, you know, I'm no longer a Labour Party member, but, you know, that kind of bullying narrative happens within the party, not just outside of the party. So it's horrific to hear that tenants and residents actually endure that as well. I think what happens is that with the number of homes, you know, there were recently figures released on the number of people within each banding and in housing need, and quite a large amount of people are actually just people they're trying to decant so they can demolish another estate, or they're people that are downsizing so they can free up a 3 or 4 bedroom flat, but then they take the priority over the 1 bedrooms that young people perhaps need. And also many of the homes are advertised for over 55, so it's a huge amount of the 1 bedroom flats are going to over 55s or downsizers, and then the young people don't get any homes. So there's some disproportionate, you know, the narrative that we're led to believe that, you know, we're building 11,000 council homes. Are they? You know, who are they for? You know, so I think there's so much, and I love the way that you challenge with facts and figures. I think that's a really great way to challenge the narrative that's being given. But I think that being in housing need, you know, obviously I should be promoting these council flats, but for the sake of 9 or 10 new flats, which inevitably aren't going to fit my family in them anyway, I'd rather that they refurbished old flats, that they didn't demolish flats. There's now a new estate that's going to be demolished, which is the Tustin estate, which is now going to be decanted as well. Apparently Richard Livingston says that they're going to decant that with no residents moving off. They're going to build before they decant or something. I don't know. That's what he was saying to us. So I don't know how that's going to work, but they need to really revise. And I think Gary's suggestion to kind of maybe work with some of the people, I haven't seen a lot of enthusiasm about, you know, stopping these developments on estates. There's been no interventions in council meetings. There's been no, you know, there seems to be a lot of support for building these, which I think is quite sad, really. But I want to try and be positive, but I can't be, and it's just so demoralising because, and it's so lovely to see Georgina and Jacob and other people from different boroughs as well joining us, because it seems it's not just our problem in Southwark. It's across different boroughs in London, and I suspect, you know, it'll eventually filter its way out of London as well. So, but thank you guys, you've done a really beautiful presentation. So thank you.
Okay, that's great, Pascal. Thanks. We've only got 8 minutes left. So before I ask Emma and Kath to come back, I just wanted to draw people's attention to the an opportunity to instrumentalise the councillors' anxiety about, as Gary described, getting opposition from council tenants and residents. There's the SGTO housing hustings, which is happening on Monday the 25th of April. I've shared the link to this webpage in the chat, and these are the councillors that are going to be, or the candidates that are going to be appearing so far. So Councillor Stephanie Cryan, who's the current Labour member for Council Homes, Councillor Damien O'Brien, the Liberal Democrat, and Claire Shepherd, the candidate, a Green candidate. It's an online meeting, and it is, like I said, on the 25th. Now, this is interesting because people may know that I believe, you know, YFR deserves a little bit of credit for this. The SGTO has actually taken the issue of infill to the Housing Scrutiny Committee. And the Housing Scrutiny made some recommendations to the Housing Committee. I don't call committees anymore, but Housing Committee, I think, whereby I think it was there was a list of kind of consultation type demands drawn up by SGTO, so which would address the issues that I talked about earlier in the meeting of you know, not telling people what they're doing, etc., etc. So you know, it all adds to the general you know, kind of opposition and feeling that the council really should start listening to its tenants and residents and not making life worse for them. Right, so we've got 5 minutes to hear from you, Kath and Emma. So go ahead, and we'll have your comments and any further suggestions.
Yeah, I've got a few things, but I don't know, Kath, if you want to kick off first about the report.
So what about the report?
About how amazing it was. No, just in relation to about the number of people, just to follow up to that we've done.
The original report,
yeah,
is just a sample of 14 flats. I'm going to email the report and the questionnaire to Tanya, and then she can share it on the YFR drive, and then everyone's got access to it.
So further to that as well, the report, we've obviously since had feedback from Stephanie Cryan about it, who gave some sort of suggestions and claims as to what work was being done, a lot of which was completely invalid. So what we're actually doing now is doing a more thorough questionnaire, as I mentioned earlier, across the estate. You mentioned, Georgina, about being able to get the feedback from people, and I think a great way to do that is there's obviously Kath's report was in a great deal of detail, and she was speaking to each party for about 45 minutes, an hour. You can do a more simple version of that, which is the version we're doing now, which is basically having literally like a tick box. Have you got damp and mold problems? Have you got electric problems? Have you got vermin or rodents? Have you got anything problems with your heating and your boiler? Have you got other issues? And then obviously with all those ticks, it means you can come up with a set of stats, and the stats are what we are then going to present back to the council and say, you claimed that you did this, you still haven't been in touch with the rest of the estate. This is the feedback we've got from the rest of the estate. Would you like to follow this up now that you can see that 60% plus have got these damp mold issues? So that's just an example of a way in which we're going to continue to pursue that matter. You suggested, I think, Gary, about the speaking to the other councillors, and I think that's great that you've obviously got that level of connection within the Labour Party, and it would be fantastic to be able to take that further and to give them, the respective parties, the nudges we would like to give them about the concerns that we have about our fellow residents as much as about the environment that we're in. Sonny Lamb is a lovely man, but Sonny seems to say what he thinks people want to hear. It doesn't always mean that he follows it up, and we can speak from experience on that
It
front.
seems like he's kind of removed from reality. Yeah. And to be honest, sometimes they just come across that being a ward councillor is a bit of a vanity project.
Yeah. And all of our Labour councillors have been absolutely awful. They haven't communicated with us, and when they have communicated with us, a lot of it has been for their own needs and their own purposes. They've had their own agendas. Yeah. That's the Liberal Democrats, as I said, have been allies more to us, but I'm sure, as you can guess, neither of us take it on a particularly political angle. We just want to get something out of it, and if it means we can go in one direction to make the others listen to us, then we will do that, and that's what's proven to work quite effectively as well.
Can I just say to Georgina's about the frustration and the fear and the anger that you feel, it's kind of made worse by isolation, and I think talking to people, people sharing their stories as simple as that, and then presenting it in some way which is bolstered by a group, just makes people feel a little bit more powerful. I don't know whether it's going to be effective. You kind of just have to do the next right thing. You can't take it all on at once. And if you approach it with anger, you're going to get burnt out. You really you can't work with rage as fuel, because you'll just get even more exhausted.
From our end, as mentioned, no proposal has actually gone through yet, which is great. But again, Gary, I'm with you on the scaffolding front as well. And I think it leads more to the safety factor. Now, whether there's scaffolding there or not, safety, health and well-being are key factors for everyone who lives on a council estate, and there might be a number of ways in which that needs to be protected, or in ways in which it's not being protected. We've had whole situations with CCTV cameras, we've got dark spaces, we've got not enough light. I think there are a lot of arguments that can be pulled up there, and again, particularly in the environment that the post-COVID environment that we're in now, people are actually taking those kind of arguments a lot more seriously than they might have done 2 years ago, because I think there's a lot more respect for the the mental anguish that people have been through, and what that can result in, not just for the individual but also for those around them as well. So I think that's a really good thing to flag up as well. we put, well, I put the question about there's 4,000 plus empty homes in Southwark, and that question was put forward to the council at the last assembly, and the written information stated that they filled 200 plus of them last year and 160 plus of them this year, which in the scheme of things, you know, is only just about 10%. That's one of our arguments as well, is why isn't better use made of these vacant properties. With the Housing Scrutiny Committee, we'd also put an argument through to them, and interestingly, they claimed that they were going to follow the matter up, but as soon as Stephanie Cryan sent us back her email, they came back saying that, well, Stephanie seems to have sorted it out, so it doesn't look like we really need to do anything anymore. Needless to say, obviously, the new information that we have will be, we've already sent back to them along with the reply to Stephanie Cryan. But again, that's the kind of overwhelming responses that one gets consistently, and it's having to keep going. And that's the hard part, because at times it can be quite soul destroying, because you can't believe that people do believe in what they've written. But it's trying to find the Achilles heels. We're still in search.
Yeah, I just want to say, Emma, thank you so much. I couldn't have done any of it without you. Like,
oh, and I couldn't have done it without you. We're like Tweedledum and Tweedledee.
We have skills in different areas, but even now our team of 4 has gone down to 2. Just having one other person who you can who you get support with and have a moan with and a laugh with and maybe even cry sometimes, it's essential. You need to buddy up.
Yeah, absolutely. I would completely concur with that, and also just the value of the network. And, you know, being able to talk to each other about what you're doing, sharing your learnings, and being able to go somewhere to ask questions. The fact is we're a solidarity network, and, you know, I think that in the few months of our existence, we've made a difference, and any campaign that comes across us and you know, comes across the people that are part of it, is going to benefit from that, because we're as strong as the people who come to our meetings and come to our protests and so on. And the Vauban Estate has been absolutely a vital part of that that movement. So it's now 34 minutes past. So I think it's time to close the meeting. That's the curtain going, and to say thanks ever so much for coming, and hopefully I'll be able to put some of that online, and I will definitely attempt to share the fantastic presentation, and good luck to everybody, and be in touch soon.
Thanks.
Thanks everyone. Lovely to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. Good night.
Thanks, Tanya.
All right. Thanks for the
everyone.
presentation, guys. That was lovely.